Alright, so what reputable sources do we have left? GOP Congresswoman predicts cannabis will be rescheduled right before the election, but she's not sure if Trump is on board. Not bad, sounds good. DEA schedules hearing on cannabis rescheduling proposal, delaying final rule until after election. Okay, Nancy Mace, no. Anthony Martinelli and the Marijuana Herald, no. So, RIP to that source. They were right once earlier this year, but they could not keep that streak alive, unfortunately. While Merrick Garland, what about him? 803 days ago, Attorney General Merrick Garland told senators in writing that DOJ was weighing cannabis enforcement guidance and would address these issues in the days ahead. Can you please define the days ahead? So from June 16th, 2022, we're now August 31st, 2024. That hurts to laugh, because I shouldn't even be laughing. Merrick Garland, not a reliable source. Now this one's a joke, we know they're not reliable, but Booker, Schumer, Wyden, joint statement on safe banking, May 11th of 2023. We look forward to watching this legislation progress through the Banking Committee and working with bipartisan partners, and we know that never happened. So, Schmuck, Booker, and Wyden. On the bright side, before we get into all the good news, as apparently the hearing isn't going to be the end of the world, thank you from the Dank Informer. If Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 in Florida are so bad, then why did the Supreme Court, which was stacked by DeSantis, approve those ballot initiatives and ruled that they pass constitutional review? That is a great question. And since DeSantis has been the governor, all of these judges have been appointed and allowed cannabis to get on the ballot. And so, of course, this really highlights that the biggest thing going forward is Florida going rec. And big thanks to the Dank Informer for being one of the few reliable resources left out there helping us stay sane during these trying times. Hey, what's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis news from August 26th to September 1st. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. And it's best to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry, identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth a lot more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. We're going to start, though, with some sales out of new states, specifically Ohio, that has recently turned on from Cleveland.com, although this is unfortunately behind a paywall now. But as of the third week, rec cannabis consumers spend $10.5 million during third week of legal sales. And so we love to see it. And so, yeah, unfortunately behind a paywall, so I can only show you so much. But $10.4 million during the third week of sales, according to new Ohio Division of Cannabis Control Board data. Speaking of Ohio, unfortunately, we're going to have to wait until September, most likely, to see what real impact that the adult use launch has had on sales overall. But worth noting, since August 6th, existing med dispensaries in Ohio are now legally able to sell adult use and legally supply the demand. And so these numbers will be a thing of the past, which is great. Now, I just want to preface this because I've been trying to find a source where I can, more accurately, consistently, and quickly share the most recent sales data. And so Headset.io, thank you for sharing all this, and they literally have data for all of these markets. So I'll put the link in the comments if you want to explore. I'm going to share some of them. But the main thing is that Headset is a private company that gets their data from the point of service apps or tablets, whatever these dispensaries use. And so take it with a grain of salt. There could be errors in it. It's not the same sales data that we get from the States, right? But there could also be errors there, and those often take so damn long with their sweet-ass time, we end up waiting forever in order to get them. So just wanted to preface that because obviously I'm doing my best to try and share what's accurate. Might not be the case, but I'll show you in a moment an example of we don't know who to friggin' trust anyways at this point, and Headset might be more trustworthy. Anyways, as a source, though, for every single market, or at least the markets they track, they have great breakdowns. So if you're interested in going through it, and at least they are accurate because in July, Michigan did do about 287 or 288 mil, I think it was, reported by the state. And so, again, take from that what you will, but lots of interesting breakdowns here if you're interested. Now, the other point I wanted to make is that typically I follow the state data as it comes out. For whatever reason, it seems like those working for the government of Illinois get the same summers as teachers because they're not doing any shit or work this summer. I don't get it. It's very frustrating. We're still waiting on the July sales data to be reported. Now, I am expecting July sales to be even higher than March. And probably even higher than December, which is typically the highest sales month we see out of any year because, of course, it's the holidays, Christmas, and many are replacing alcohol with cannabis, which is great. But on that note, right, we don't have July from Illinois yet, but Headset does. So let's see what Headset says. July 2024, boom, 166.19 million, which is higher than the March high we've seen this year and the December high of last year. But then they say negative 0.4% year-over-year growth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 166 million compared to 140 million of last year is not negative 0.4% growth. And so, again, I don't know, take these all with a grain of salt, but more information here, including market comparisons from Illinois and others, and category performance. And so just sharing a few others of the new markets that we're interested in. Maryland cannabis sales, July of 2024. Overview, apparently they hit 97.38 million, year-over-year growth, 10.7%, thanks to their recent adult use market launching as well. So here's the overview if you're interested. Market comparison with Maryland and Colorado, and then category performance. All the links will be in the comments. Missouri, July 2024 overview, 123.29 million. Love to see it. Year-over-year growth, 0.1%. Again, that seems small, but I didn't do the extra looking to certify it and whatnot. So take it with a grain of salt. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. I wouldn't mind that at all in the comments. Well, market comparisons for Missouri. We like that they continue to be a hot market. New York, though, I will mention them later. They are turning things up as they are shutting down illegal shops, while category performance for Missouri. Well, last but not least, the Big Apple, more like the Big Crapple. What could have been such a beautiful cannabis market if it wasn't run by Marxists? And so this is what you get when you promise social equity, equal outcomes to everybody, which means nobody gets a dispensary. And I mean, they delivered on that promise. So for about 3 years, they didn't open a single legal outlet, and the illicit stores ran rampant. And after all the lawsuits piled in this year, they're like, okay, fine, we have to prosecute crime again. Law enforcement, please shut down the thousands of illicit shops selling the bullshit knockoff hemp-derived gas station alternative product that is sadly untested and likely the consequence of a lot of what prohibitionists claim. And all that to say, finally, they had to open legal shops and work in the interests of Americans. Thankfully, the American way pulled through, and I think they're at 116 legal outlets now, which got them to 60.37 million thus far for a fabricated 280% year-over-year growth. And so market comparison for them, comparing it with the Blueprint, Colorado, the most mature market in the country, while category performance, of course, they're up by massive numbers because they weren't even available at this time last year through any legal outlets. Ain't that a shame? And so from headset.io, though, if you just click on markets, it has all this data for at least these 4 markets where Headset is tracking in Canada and all these markets in the US too. And so I didn't feature all of them. Of course, some of them are the more mature markets. I featured the newer ones that we're more interested in, where a lot of MSOs have exposure. But of course, all links will be in the comments if you're interested. And while this is behind a paywall, and it asks a very important question that most prohibitionists are afraid to touch. If California's weed system's broken, why is Michigan's thriving? Because it's all about how it's implemented, right? It's all about the regulations, the commercial markets, and hopefully people doing their damn jobs. And what we see out of certain states that have been a massive success, most have been a success, it just takes time, but especially out of Michigan, the leader, and then the newly launched markets that provide equal access to opportunity, and over at least 100 dispensaries to properly supply the demand, and those would be Missouri, Maryland, and Ohio, compared to the batshit crazy policy you get out of California, which has a population of 40 million people, and only 1,000 legal dispensary outlets. So of course the black market's going to run rampant. And then New York, they legalize, and it takes them 3 years to open the first legal adult use dispensary. And so it's all about how it's done and the mindset of the people in charge of implementing it. And so important reminder, though, that this is one of the few items most Americans can agree on. And while I couldn't find the original graph, the sources do say Pew Research Center and Gallup, so I'll try and find that a bit later, apparently as of August 26th. But main reminder, overall support for cannabis legalization in the sense that no one should be criminalized or go to jail or face arrest for having possession of a plant for personal use. It's nonsense. 79% of ages 18 to 35 understand this. 71% of ages 35 to 55 agree. And fortunately, 64% even, 55 and over, are coming to their senses. And apparently the breakdown, 87% are Dems, 70% are independents, and 55% are Republicans. So take from that what you will, while under the studies that highlight why this plant should have been descheduled years ago and never put in the Schedule 1 in the first place, exploring the relationship between cannabis use and COVID-19 outcomes. We've seen many studies like this, sadly just never in the mainstream headlines,
but all over PubMed and others. You can pause to read the background and materials and methods, though figure I should read the results. Out of 322,000 patients included in the study, 2,603 were cannabis users. Cannabis users were younger and had higher prevalence of tobacco use. And on initial analysis, cannabis users had significantly lower rates of severe COVID-19 infection, intubation, ARDS, acute respiratory failure, severe sepsis with multi-organ failure, mortality, and shorter length of hospital stay. And after one-to-one matching, cannabis use not only was analyzed, but was associated with all of that. Huh! Fascinating. Again, how is this not plastered on all the mainstream outlets? Oh, it seems like the only solution was the gene therapy. Conclusion, cannabis users had better outcomes and mortality compared with non-users. And we've seen this from many, many studies. How we're not racing to research this, I don't get it. The beneficial effect, I do. Big Pharma and the money against this. But the beneficial effect of cannabis use may be attributed to its immunomodulatory effects, something we'd find out a whole lot more about once we outright deschedule this miracle plant. For God's sakes. Well, from PubMed, a review, so cannabinoids and triple-negative breast cancer treatment from August 2024. What does the review find? Cannabinoids show anti-tumor activity in most preclinical studies in TNBC, triple-negative breast cancer models, and do not appear to have adverse effects in chemo, while clinical data are needed to evaluate the efficacy and safety in humans. Yeah, I wonder if there was a way we could collect more data. Maybe outright deschedule this plant that never belonged in the Schedule 1 in the first place, right? And importantly, the endocannabinoid system is linked to the immune system and immunosuppression. Fascinating, right? And I'm aware of the endocannabinoid system. If you've watched my videos for a long time, you're likely aware, but it is the system that exists in every single mammal and human. But fun fact, I started seeing a nurse recently. She works in a hospital. She works with doctors. And she's never heard of the endocannabinoid system. Make it make sense, right? So lastly, therefore, cannabinoid receptors could be a potential biomarker for immune checkpoint inhibitor therapy or a novel mechanism to reverse resistance to immunotherapy. Yes, no shit, hence why getting this plant out of any sort of scheduling category is in every American's best interest, because obviously the public health victories that come with ending prohibition speak for themselves, like this next slide will tell us. And so thank you, Mark Landers. Reminder that not only on top of all this good stuff, Denver, Colorado officials published a report on the first 10 years of legal cannabis sales, the first state to do it, showing that the cannabis industry has generated hundreds of millions in revenue that has been distributed to homeless services, affordable housing, education, and more, on top of the fact that many studies from Canada, Colorado, and other states have proven that adolescent cannabis use declined because it's harder to get it when you have to be 21 and older to purchase it through an outlet that requires identification and actually checks for that shit, right? And so to bring you through to this, I'm sorry to share marijuana moment. I hate them as much as you do as well. But for residents wondering how the city is allocating tax revenues from those sales, the report breaks down where those dollars went in 2023 alone. So a bit more of a breakdown if you are interested. And while these numbers are beautiful, of course, it's up to the people of Denver, Colorado to hold those accountable who get these funds to make sure that they allocate them and distribute them correctly. But a bit more here if you wanted to check it out. But the one other thing I wanted to point out, just because prohibitionists love to talk about crime in these places as if it's running rampant at all-time high. Meanwhile, illicit cannabis activity has steadily declined as the city's market has evolved, with cannabis-related offenses representing just 0.2% of crimes last year. Law enforcement seizures of illicit cannabis fell, not feel, from 2.4 pounds or 2.4K pounds in 2022 to 266 pounds last year. Try and say it doesn't work. And that's down from 9,500 pounds in 2014 when sales launched. Burglaries of cannabis businesses also dropped from 156 in 2022 to 98 in 2023. Massive win for the public, especially when regulations were introduced that required safe overnight storage of cannabis and cash, which seems like a really good idea other states should pick up on. But hey, more data right here to shut up all those bullshit prohibitionist accounts up. And they must hate that it's being collected, and they just have to continue to lie to themselves and spew bullshit. It can't be good for your soul. It must be exhausting and awful. While the last story I will likely ever share from the Marijuana Herald, just because the only other story that shared this publication was Marijuana Moment. And I only want to share one of each if I have to. And so the last story I'll likely share by Anthony Martinelli. Good news, though, if anything, Home Depot to cease testing workers as they're set to overhaul its drug testing policy by removing cannabis from all drug testing panels and halting pre-employment drug tests for the majority of its workforce. And while the Marijuana Herald is not necessarily a reputable source anymore, it is no more reputable than Marijuana Moment, and Marijuana Herald did share this same story, which is essentially the only two to actually share it, highlighting, though, that this is a massive company that will no longer be testing its over 400,000 employees. That's a big number to keep in mind. Again, it's a precedent. We hope that more large U.S. organizations will follow after they've done it first. Well, from Do the Right Thing, another big win this past week that came kind of quiet, but so from Do the Right Thing, I'm going to share what he says because I don't know a whole lot about this. He believes the only remaining appeal would have to be the Supreme Court. And ideally, you'd think the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the American people and the Constitution versus, whatever bullshit ideology is trying to seep into it at this day and age. And so, of course, I'll keep you updated on that, but back to the unfortunate story. Pablo shares why this actually may be good news, really. And I will admit, when I saw the news drop, I was crushed. I was like, oh, I don't have the energy to make a video this weekend then. Oh, why me? And I stopped being a little bitch, and the days went on, and I realized it doesn't really change anything. And if anything, for the DEA and the DOJ, it's probably better not to rush it or fast track and go through all of the proper hoops. Because, of course, they are the ones defending that HHS says cannabis is a medicine, right? And if anything, they should be aiming to shut out the prohibitionist bullshit ideology if they're following the science. So take from that what you will, but Pablo's report will be in the comments. Their take, it's 13 pages, so if you're interested, I'll pause it here so you can read what happened. Although less relevant, the hearing should not come as a great surprise. And then I'll scroll down a little bit more. You can pause the good, the bad, the ugly on why this is good news. And then the good, the bad, the ugly on why this is bad news, and the ugly. And so take from that what you will. While we do got to show the bearish case, so from Reach Street 420, for the MSOs that didn't pay their taxes, this could be a factor. Though I don't know if it is. Again, I'm just trying to share all of the possible information so that we can paint as clear a picture as we can. So let me know in the comments what you think. But with rescheduling delayed until 2025, likely because, of course, we know that the final ruling isn't going to come before 2025, the MSOs who receive tax refunds from the IRS in 2024 will have to pay it back with a 27% penalty plus interest. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but this is from Week 420's reporting. There's a reason why the 280E taxes owed go to uncertain tax liabilities on the balance sheet. Time bomb waiting to explode. And so whether this is true or not, I have no idea. Just sharing it. Don't shoot the messenger. Let me know what you think in the comments. But moving along, so back to the topic of the ALG hearing. Is it good or is it bad? We don't ultimately know. It was never in our control. All we can do is plan accordingly. But it was always to be part of the process and to be expected. So AGP on U.S. cannabis, DEA schedule December 2 hearing. Or not DEA schedules. DEA schedules December 2 hearing. Wouldn't that be nice? Pushes a potential final rule post-election. So, of course, you can pause to read. And that makes the election ultimately more or less interesting. I'm not exactly sure. While we've got Beacon on U.S. cannabis from Todd Harrison, the same thing. It's ultimately just schmuck going from soon to fairly soon. Like, shoot me now, right? Fucking ridiculous. What they've put us all through, man. This is awful. We better get our day. Lord, come on. Don't screw us over now. While Foley Hoag, August 27th, 2024, just a write-up from a law publication if you are interested. Cannabis rescheduling update. DEA announces date for ALJ hearing. Pause to read for the first paragraph in the hearing, while, of course, final rule and judicial review, and that's pretty much it. Short and sweet, but more perspective to weigh against what you already know. But ultimately, I don't think anybody knows, and we're just going to have to wait and see, which sucks to hear, but it is what it is. Well, state news, the Nebraska Secretary of State said Friday that both medical cannabis ballot initiatives and the school choice referendum will appear on Nebraska ballots in November. So we love to see that. One of the few states that has no access to a safer, non-addictive medicinal alternative will now get the chance to vote in November. And so Med in Nebraska will join, I believe, adult use in North Dakota, South Dakota, Florida, and anywhere else. Let me know if I'm missing in the comments. Well, Trulieve to open 4 new dispensaries in Florida, in Cocoa, Miramar Beach, Niceville, and Tampa. So, damn, Trulieve is not slowing down, opening as many stores as they still can with that free cash flow. I'm sure they're happy to be celebrating. And so, more here if you wanted to pause to read, if you're interested as a Trulieve shareholder. While Georgia's new CBD rule would cap Delta-9 THC. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm starting to lose it, but is Delta-9 THC and THCA a form of hemp-derived knockoff THC, whereas Delta-8 THC is the THC you get from the medicinal plant that most of the studies on PubMed are built around? Let me know in the comments, because I'm just starting to get confused with all of them. But why it matters, of course, we know medical cannabis is tightly regulated in Georgia, but thanks to the Farm Bill loophole in 2018, products infused with the knockoff THC have become big business. After years of relatively few regulations in Georgia, the pendulum is swinging back, and now they're putting a cap on this knockoff hemp-derived form of THC, apparently, and capping, what are they doing? They're capping gummies at 150 milligrams. They're capping beverages at 5, topicals at 1,000 milligrams, tinctures at 1 milligram, or 10 fluid ounces. So some change is coming to Georgia, ultimately to help what they have of a legal CBD market, unfortunately. So this is obviously a big win against some of the hemp-derived knockoff products in Georgia, but it certainly doesn't help the legal industry in Georgia because Georgia doesn't have much of a legal industry. All they can sell is CBD. But I believe, is it Trulieve still that stands to benefit the most out of Georgia's pharmacies? And so well, back to this one to elaborate on THCA products from the Dank Informer. If weed sold as THCA flower via the hemp channel is illegal, then why does MJBizDaily have a sponsored page that promotes hemp flower products sprayed with chemically derived cannabinoid isolates? Imagine that. One of the sources that I thought so highly of for so long has been one of the driving problems for the legal industry I've been invested in and handicapped by so long because my money's been stuck in it. I am an idiot, I guess. Or the pig fuckery going on in the background is bigger than we all could have imagined. If you Google best THCA, MJBiz's article is number 3 on the search results and lists 5 hemp product companies and their products. Let's explore further. And so I invite you to go down the fascinating rabbit hole. The Dank Informer never ceases to impress. And so just highlighting how MJBizDaily, I mean, I'm surprised Marijuana Moment hasn't stooped to this level. But yeah, fascinating that one of these sources sharing the good news for the legal industry is also one of the drivers of the biggest problem that the U.S. is facing now, the fake weed epidemic. So take from that what you will and let me know in the comments what you think about that. While from Do the Right Thing, Adam Goers was featured on the Dales Report to talk timing and potential for rescheduling. According to him, and I will admit off the top of my head I don't remember who Adam Goers is, but he says that the ALJ hearing will ensure the final rule on cannabis rescheduling is bulletproof per White House and DOJ contacts he heard from this week. So take that with a grain of salt. Again, if this person is right down the line, hey, then we can consider them one of our few credible sources. But going through the list, we don't have many left. And he also says Kamala Harris continues to be the biggest proponent of rescheduling within the White House. She hasn't said shit about it. So hopefully she becomes a bit more vocal. So if you're sticking to your guns, much like I am, thanks Todd for sharing what Viridian has to say on U.S. cannabis. Now this is not advice. Plan accordingly for your own situation. I'm just sharing what this chart is telling me. And so if this chart is telling you anything different, let me know in the comments. But get this. Todd posted this on the 28th of August, but this chart was shared from Viridian on the 23rd. And I believe this was before we got the announcement of the ALJ hearing. Now, fun fact is when the ALJ hearing announcement came out, which would have been this week, I forget exactly which day, when it came out maybe on the 28th, the MSOs and their prices dropped by about 10%. So from 7.10x, they probably would have dropped to a point which makes them the most attractive to buy ever. Because for contrast or perspective, this shows the multiples and the market caps that the MSOs were trading at combined, 24.313x, at the all-time high peak in February of 2021, when these companies were still trading on the over-counter, right? Still happened then now, which leads us to believe it's going to happen again. It's just when the flip switches. But at the same time, those companies were making half the revenue. They had half the stores. They were much tinier, not profitable. And think of how much further those companies have come along now, and you can literally get them at this rate of valuations, essentially. And so again, this is not advice. You can choose to do nothing, or you can choose to be greedy when others are fearful, as I've chosen to do. Ultimately, no one knows what is going to happen, though I do believe it is still a one-not-if scenario. And as hard as it is, we have to let the rescheduling process play out. But fortunately, we're not relying on the president, the VP, or Congress for any of that to get done, are we? So that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.